And there's nothing wrong with difference.
Yes, and so that's an area of growth for most women. All right, guys, let's dive into this conversation about the roommate zone. Again, I want you to join me for this free training that's taking place at the very beginning of March. Go to IBelieveInMarriage.com/roommate zone. IBelieveInMarriage.com/roommate zone to be the first to know when the registration link goes live. I really want you to join me for this training. It's brand new. And when I tell you I'm excited about it, because I have worked really hard to help couples understand what this is and how to get out of it. So let's talk a little bit about what the roommate zone is. The roommate zone is when couples are living together, but they aren't doing life together. It's like two ships passing in the night. Like I just talked about, you're consumed with your world, he's consumed with his world, and the two of you are living in the house together, and you might make sure that the kids get their projects done, and you might make sure that the mortgage is paid. You may make sure that there are lights on in the house, but you're not entrenched in each other's life. And so that's the roommate zone. But I want to normalize that for you. My process in working with couples is threefold. Actually, working with anybody that I counsel is threefold. Number one, when they're sharing a challenge with me, I try my best to empathize with them. Regardless of what the challenge is, I want you to know I'm sorry you are experiencing that, and I don't want you to experience that. I empathize with them. And then I normalize it. Gosh, if anybody was dealing with this, they would feel that, or they would feel some type of emotion. And then lastly, after I've empathized, after I normalize, this is when people have to determine if I'm the therapist for them. Because I'm going to empathize with you, and then I'm going to normalize it for you, but then we're going to strategize. What do we need to do? And if you're not interested in moving forward, if you're not interested in doing something about where you are, I'm going to frustrate you. I'm not the girl for you. So that's the same thing when it comes to the roommate zone. I want to normalize it for you. That's why Lee and I are doing this Facebook Live, because I want you to understand I have not met a couple. And if I could number the couples that I have seen over my time in my field, I would be a rich woman. If I could put a dollar tag, well, I kind of do put a dollar tag on them, so maybe I won't. But anyway, every couple I've ever worked with, even couples I know personally, including Lee and I, can find ourselves in the roommate zone. It is just what happens with life. So I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to know if you have been there, or if you are there, that's the nature of relationships. Life begins to get in the way. And life can be a parent's health, your own health, challenges with finances, changes in your career. Your children are running crazy. Just life begins to pull at your connection. And let me talk to those of you who are faith-based. The reality is, marriage is an institution created by God. And we have an enemy that doesn't want this connection to be strong. So the enemy is also trying to tear apart this connection. And so we have to be careful about that, aware of it, and figure out what we're going to do about it. So with that in mind, Lee, I have a question for you. All right. Would you agree that women... I'm scared to ask this question. Would you agree that women are more sensitive to the disconnect? So the roommate zone is a subtle disconnect that begins to happen in marriage. So Lee, would you agree that women tend to be more sensitive to the roommate zone?
And when you say sensitive to the roommate zone, you mean they're more aware that there's beginning to be a disconnection in the house. I would say yes, and I will qualify that yes, but I would say yes in the sense that, and I'll just take it from our perspective. When we tend to be going down that road, you'll be the first to communicate, hey, I'm feeling a certain kind of way. I feel like I'm feeling some kind of way. And for me, I'm like, everything is good. Like, there's no issue. We're fine. Just, but you start, sensing, that there is something, or being aware that something is not right. And it may just be you, like you're sensing there's something that's not sitting well.
Tell them what you mean by it might be me.
But no, thank you. It might be you done messed me up now. It might be that you're that there is a challenge going on that you just feel like we're not connecting the way that we ought to be, and you're not comfortable with that. And I'll be like, I'm fine. Like, there's nothing else. But here's the thing: if there is something that's going on with you or you're feeling a certain kind of way, then we have to communicate. We have to talk about what's going on. And it may be that you're feeling like after we come home, from work, I'm down, after we eat, I'm downstairs and you're upstairs. You're upstairs in your room watching what you want to watch, doing whatever work you're doing. I'm downstairs watching what I want to watch, doing my whatever work I have to do or whatever. And that becomes the routine. Mm-hmm. There's not a challenge. We're not arguing. There's no dissension amongst us and all of that. But it begins to be a habit. And then you start feeling that we are heading down this road. Mm-hmm. For me, it might just be like it's Monday Night Football. Every Monday night, I'm downstairs because I'm watching Monday Night Football. And if you're in a room, you want to have talks about, life aspirations and all of that. It could be as simple as that, or it could be, as deep as we're two ships passing in the night, and mm-hmm. It could be anywhere in between. Regardless of what it is, I think it's healthy to have that conversation about what's going on, because if it is just as simple as a temporary kind of condition or mm-hmm. incident or whatever, well, let's talk about it. Baby, everything is good. It's Monday night. I like to watch Monday night downstairs by myself,
Why do you like to watch it by yourself again?
Huh?
Why do you like to watch it by yourself?
Because you want to have deep philosophical, theological,
I want to do it on the commercials.
No. But the conversations don't last just in those 2-minute slots of commercials. It doesn't do that. Then you get mad because I'm like, the game's on.
Oh yeah, that's just takes me to. Okay, so what we're trying to say, what I'm hoping that you're getting is that I believe I have found over the work I do that women tend to be a little bit more sensitive about it, and you're saying that you agree with that, but it might be because we are the ones who's having the issue, and the husband isn't having the issue. And the husband
that may not be, but that's, if it's an issue with one person in the marriage, it's an issue. Right. But it may be, you may just be on two different pages. Right. And neither one may be right or wrong. It's just, let's talk it out and see where we are.
I love that.
You may need to just have a sense of confidence that everything is okay. Like, I'm okay with you. It just happens to be kind of where we are or whatever.
Right.
Or it may be as deep as we're heading down this road that is not good, and we need to be able to address it. And so we need to communicate neither way.
And what I'm hoping, Lee, and what I want the husbands and the wives to hear this, because as women, when I'm feeling a disconnect, when I'm feeling the subtle disconnect start or is there, if I'm honest, it can be frustrating to me when you don't sense the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's important that we are sensitive to the fact that just because I am feeling a disconnect, I can't force him to be feeling that same disconnect. Does that make sense? Like, if I'm feeling,
supposed to respond back to you.
I'm asking you.
Oh, you're asking me. Oh, okay, you're looking at the camera like, you talking to me or you talking to?
Cannot. We've been going good. We've been going good, and you're about to annoy me. So, okay, so
ask the question again.
Okay. As women, I believe that as a wife, where my struggle comes in is when I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling that we're going down the path of disconnect, and I bring that to you. I want you to agree that we're disconnected. Right. But you may not agree with that. Yeah. And as wives, I want us to recognize, just because I am feeling disconnected, like I'm feeling disconnected, I can't force him to be feeling disconnected as well.
Yeah, don't be mad that I don't feel the same way that you feel, because we're different people. We deal with things differently. There may be different situations going on. So you can't expect me to feel the same way that you're feeling. And it doesn't make me wrong. Right. Like, we actually might be good.
For you.
Yeah, but even for you, I would say. But until you talk through the situation, you may be feeling a certain way because of what you think might be going on.
True, absolutely.
And that's why I say communicate that. And after we communicate, you may be like, oh, okay.
Right. So what you're saying is, if I come to you and I'm starting to feel some kind of way because lately we haven't been engaging with one another. I can't read that really quick. Hold on. Okay, I'll come back to that. So I might be feeling like, gosh, we haven't been talking. It seems like every Monday he's downstairs and he's not upstairs with me. And I'm starting to feel this agitation. So Lee is saying to the wives, just come and have a conversation. Because I can come and say, Lee, what's going on? I feel like you're not really into me. And you say, nah, baby, it's the game. Right. I want to watch the game.
Right.
And so,
or it's March it's March Madness and there's basketball on like 24/7 all throughout the day. So during those few weeks in March, I'm prepping you now because March is in a couple of weeks.
Honey, when I scheduled, let me tell you how much I've learned from you. When I scheduled the webinar for March, I looked up when March Madness starts to make sure I did not schedule it during March Madness. Give me some.
Are you sure it's not during? I'll recheck the schedule.
It's the first week of March.
I'll recheck the schedule because if you want men to participate, we want to make sure that it's not conflicting. Okay. All right.
So I think I want y'all to. I hope you guys got that. So ladies, if you find that you're feeling a disconnect and you bring it to your spouse, it's so that you guys can have a conversation, not so that you can be upset, because that takes you down a whole different path. Because now we're arguing because you're not feeling disconnected. Why aren't you feeling disconnected? I'm feeling disconnected, and that takes us down a totally different path. Okay, so
but let me give just a tip for the men. If your wife comes to you and said, "Hey, I'm feeling disconnected," or whatever, don't be defensive initially. Well, don't be defensive, period. And I'm saying that because if she's bringing it to you, there is something in her that I think you have to honor and you have to flesh out. So it may not. Let's be clear. I'm being just honest. It never comes at a good time. Okay, that conversation never happens like when nothing is going on. When you don't have no work to do, when the game is not. It's never like that. But when it comes forward, lean into the conversation. Yeah. Lean into it. I'm telling you, you're going to get much more fruit out of it than you expect. And I think your wife will honor the fact that you're leaning into it versus. And if you've been down this road before and it really hadn't ended well or whatever, it might throw her for a loop. Like
she might be like, whoa.
She might be ready for an argument, and then you throw up like, what? Now she's like, oh Lord, what do I do now? What do I do now? I don't know which way to go. So
he's listening to me? Wait a minute. So that's really good. Okay. So I know, Lee, what makes, so again, we're talking about the roommate zone. I would love for you to join me for the live training that's happening at the top of March. The link is right here on the video, but it's IBelieveInMarriage.com/roommate zone. I know what makes me feel that we're headed down that path when the littlest things, okay, I'm going to speak for me. When the littlest things that Lee does annoys me. Like, he could cough wrong. When I'm in that place where I'm starting to feel disconnected, he could cough wrong. And I'm like, see, so you can't get you a cough drop? Like, the littlest things annoy me. Or,
well, you don't like when I cough, period. So I was coughing before we turned this on.
And what did I say?
And she said, don't be doing that on my platform.
don't be doing all that.
And she did it just like that. Don't be doing it on my platform. But you don't hear my wife in the morning. I'm going to just leave it at that.
But you know they call me Froggy because they call my peeps call me Froggy. So when little things he does annoys me, I can tell there's a disconnect when our sex life is limited or lacking, like when we're not frequent. I start to feel a disconnect when there's so many things on my mind that I haven't had a chance to go over with him to talk. Not anything like business, but just like if I'm having a conflict with a friend, or if I'm having frustrations at work and he doesn't know about it, I know that we haven't connected. So those are some indicators for me that, wait a minute, something's happening right here. So you talked about, I said, are women more sensitive about it? And one of the things it seems like to me, and one of the things, Lee, you helped me with in my work in I Believe in Marriage is to make sure that I am intentional about not just seeing it from a woman's perspective. I fight really hard to see or understand. I can't see it from a man's perspective, but to understand a man's perspective. But what it seems like to me is that you very rarely feel the disconnect before I do. Right. So is there an indicator for you, not because of me, but is there an indicator for you that we're disconnected and that maybe the men can pay attention to?
And I'll be honest, I can see the disconnect more in the rear view than I can in the front. Was it the
front view?
The windshield. The windshield. Yeah, I can see the disconnect. If I'm thinking backwards now, I see it more clearly, and it's kind of like once I'm in a moment, I don't see it as clearly or whatever. So, as much as honestly I may not feel like having that conversation, it's good for me to have the conversation, because if it is true that there's that real connection between, and we're heading down a path that we shouldn't be, it's good that I have that conversation. But looking in the rear view, I can tell you what that looks like for me. It looks like we are spending a heavy amount of our time separated. You in your space, me in my space. It looks like I'm not fully aware of what's going on in your world too, whether it's your business or anything, or whether it's me with the ministry or any of the other things that I'm doing. It may look like what's going on with the girls, and I know what's going on with the girls, but we haven't talked about together what's going on with the girls. I don't know what you know. You don't know what I know. About what's going on with the girls, and so that's kind of looking in the rear view. I'm like, okay, those are those indicators or whatever. I think what I need to do is just be more sensitive in the moment. Saying, because once I get entrenched, like you said, I'm all in, and it takes a lot for me to kind of get up in arms about, because I look at things through the lens of kind of optimism.
Yes.
So I'm like, things are good. I mean, if we're not fighting or having heavy debates,
intense
fellowship, right? I'm thinking we're good, but we may not be on the path of good.
And so, of course, like you just said, if there's intense arguments, if we're fighting all the time, then of course that's a major indicator. If you're constantly arguing and constantly at each other's throat, that's an easy indicator. But you're saying that for you'll see it after I've mentioned it. Like most of the time after I've mentioned it, you can look back. And so, ladies, I hope that helps you. Again, remember I talked earlier about being careful about preferences over principles, or I don't want to make the assumption that our dynamic is your dynamic. I'm hoping that seeing our dynamic will help you to get a view of how to view your dynamic. And one of the common themes is that often as women, we tend to be sensitive to it. Like our sensitivity meter is different. Lee just said he sees things through an optimistic point of view. And did you see me kind of roll my eyes? Because literally, we can look at the exact same thing, and he's looking at it like, wow, this is going to work out. And I'm barely able to stand because I'm so overwhelmed by it. So then he takes that same thing into our marriage. And so we can be looking at the same season of life in our marriage, and he sees it totally different from me. And I tend to have very black and white thinking. It's either this or that, which is a cognitive distortion. I have black and white thinking, and we all have cognitive distortions. And so because of my black and white thinking, I've had to work really hard in my marriage to see the gray, to recognize just because I see it this way doesn't mean that that's the way it is. And I'm saying this openly to say I'm still working on it. My husband often has to say, that's not how I see it. And so ladies, if you are sensitive to it, then I don't want you to get frustrated that your husband doesn't feel it. But husbands, did you just hear what Lee said? If one of us has an issue, it's an issue. Lean into it. Instead of becoming defensive, hear what she's saying. If your wife is saying, I feel disconnected from you, that is not what you want.
And also, the person who is sensing it first or really bringing the conversation forward, also be, I would say, thoughtful about the presentation.
Yes.
Don't be accusatory. That's the word I think I'm looking for. In your manner, you're doing this or you're not doing that or whatever. I mean, just kind of, you also be sensitive in your
how you share
and how you're sharing with it. I think that's important because how you say it can put the other person on the defense, even though that's not an excuse. For us to automatically get on the defense. But I think if you can share it to say, hey, however you say it, but hey, I'm sensing kind of there's a kind of disconnection or something's kind of going on, and I don't know exactly what it is. What do you think about it?
Yeah.
Now, if the other person says nothing and leaves it at that, that's not a good answer.
Right.
And when I say lean into it, and we've been talking about kind of women bringing it forward and men doing, but whoever the person who is hearing it, when I say lean into it, if you say, well, what do you think? well, I don't know, I'm not sensing that, but explain a little bit more.
It's coming on that point. You told me, one of the things you say to me often when I come with this, baby, we're headed toward the roommate zone. So this is not working. You often say, be specific. Like, what do you mean? Because I'm talking about, because we can get at a standstill. I'm saying, baby, I feel disconnected. He's saying, I don't feel disconnected. So there we are.
Right.
But when I'm specific, when I say I feel disconnected because you don't know what's going on in my life, that even can come across accusatory, what I just said. So let me shift it. Let me try to shift that in the live and in person. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling disconnected because I haven't had a chance to share with you where I am. And I don't know where you are. And I want us to fix that because I find myself calling my sister, telling her what's going on, or I find myself calling one of my girlfriends. I want to be able to tell you what's going on.
Right. And then she says something like that. Well, have we talked about it? Have you tried to share with me? Now, if I haven't been open to share with her, then it's difficult for me to take the blame on that because you immediately picked up the phone for whatever reason
to call my sister.
To call your sister.
Right.
Now, if you said, well, no, I tried to sit down and you brushed me off, or
because the game was on. I tried to sit down, and you said, baby, the game was on.
I said, wait till halftime.
Right.
And then you went upstairs and called your sister.
Called my sister, said, so he gonna say. So, again, I hope that helps you guys. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up. If this video has helped you, will you share it on your platform? And just, let's start a dialogue. I see your comments coming in. Guys, I really can't see that far, so that's why I'm not engaging in the comments. I just saw my line sister, Aisha, said, all the way in New York, big Brooklyn. She just said she too sees black and white. If you guys want a list of cognitive distortions, that's on. Just let me know, because we all have cognitive distortions, and cognitive distortions are just the way that our thinking is distorted. Another word for it is stinking thinking. We all have it, and if you don't know what your default cognitive distortion is, it is impacting your communication with your spouse, I'm telling you, or with your significant other, or with your children. If you don't know what your default negative way of thinking is, it is going to impact you. But once you're aware of it, what are you going to do about it? One of the statements I say often, Aisha, this is for you. One of the statements I say often to Lee is this: can you help me to see it the way you see it? That one line has really, I find myself at a 10. I'm angry, I'm at a 10. And well, probably when I'm at a 10, I don't do this. So, because when I'm at a 10,
it's all over.
So more like when I'm at a 7, I will say, can you help me to see it the way you're seeing it? I'll say, Lee, really, help me understand it the way you're saying. Now, if I say it like this, watch this. If I say, that's just crazy. Like, what are you thinking? That shuts him down. He's not fooling with me anymore. But if I say, babe, help me to understand the way you were thinking. Because I know I have black or white thinking. I know I see it either as this or that. And so because I know that, and that's the case in all relationships I have, then that one line helps me. All right, we're going to wrap up, Lee. I want us to share very quickly. Please keep your comments coming. We're going to continue to check in, and we'll respond back and forth. Let's wrap up and just talk a little bit about what do we do in these situations. So when we do find ourselves in the roommate zone, I want to help you get out of it and stay out of it. But the reality is marriage, life happens. And so what do we do, honey, when we find ourselves in the roommate zone? When we find ourselves in it or headed toward it, what do you think are some things that we do that kind of help us?
Well, someone has to communicate that they're feeling like there's an issue there. I think number one, you got to communicate. Number two, I think that you both have to lean into what the challenges may be, which means to ask probing questions, to kind of hear what's going on in the other person's world, because one of the challenges, you just may be unaware of what's going on. I may be distant because of challenges that are going on in my head with whatever's going on in my world, whether it's ministry, whether it's business, whether it's even dealing with issues dealing with the house or the girls or finances. So lean into the conversation and ask those probing questions to open up the dialogue. I think, but both parties have to be open to that. Okay.
Yes.
And once you open yourself up to that, then you can begin to connect in a way that you haven't connected.
Yeah, I love that. And I love when you just said that, I want to piggyback on what you said earlier. So again, in our marriage, this might not be the case for your marriage, but in our marriage, I tend to be the one that brings that to Lee. I will say, babe, I'm feeling disconnected. But the one thing I can say to you is that he doesn't fight me. He leans into it. He'll say, well, okay, tell me what's going on, what you're feeling, what we need to do. So that makes it easier for me to let him know. I don't have to convince him that I'm in this space.
Because here's the wrong response for me. If she brings something, to me, and she says, I feel like we're in a roommate zone. What you mean we in a roommate zone? We ain't in a roommate zone. We're fine.
Yeah.
That's wrong response.
Because when he says, if he were to say to me, we fine, that's saying, I don't care about what you're feeling.
Right. We're not fine. I may be fine, but clearly we're not fine because she's not fine. Now, but we may not be bad neither, because if I'm not, so it kind of, but the point is this. If someone brings it to you, let's not get defensive.
Not to get defensive, right.
At all. At first I was going to say don't initially be defensive, but don't be defensive. Lean into what's going on, because here's the thing, and I've been just thinking about this since we've been talking. I didn't get married to be celibate, and I didn't get married to have a roommate. Okay?
Boy, I'm going to say that on the webinar.
Because roommates, guess what? You have the option of for roommates. And this is, I think, indicative of what's going on in the world right now. With a roommate, you got options. Guess what? If I don't want to be your roommate no more, 2 fingers. I'm out. I'm going to go find me another roommate.
Yes.
And so I think that's what happens. We haven't been calling it the roommate zone. I love that term. You need to patent it or whatever. So,
I need to TM it.
Your next
trademark it.
Yeah. So, but no, nobody, I didn't get married to have a roommate. I had a roommate before we got married, It was a dude, so I couldn't do married things.
Oh my God. So, again, but I brought that up because I wanted to say, Lee said that one of the things we do is we lean into the conversation. And he said that if I asked probing questions, I can find out what's going on with him. But that goes back to the wisdom I gave for wives early on. It's very important that I create a space that he feels comfortable sharing with me whatever it is. So if it is, he's frustrated with finances, and what would happen in the past, the Bible says the heart of her husband safely trusts her, and that's just not fidelity, that's trusting her with his heart. And so what would happen in the past, he would bring, sometimes still now, he would bring stuff to me, and I take it from a 3 and I make it a 15, because another cognitive distortion that I have is catastrophizing, taking what's a 3, or it could be a 10. 10 is bad enough, but by the time I finish with it, I'm gonna make it a what, baby?
100.
So that's catastrophizing. I take it and I make it bigger than what it is. And so that would cause him in the past to not want to share with me until it was all resolved, because I can't do, let me tell you this really quickly. We were just talking the other day. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I had a very, very serious hospital stay and had to have a major surgery. And we were just talking last night because when it was time to call my mother, first of all, he did not want to call her before the surgery. And then when he got her on the phone, he was really minimizing the situation. So we were talking about it last night, and he said, because, baby, it was already too much going on. I couldn't take on what was going on with you and take your mama on, too. He said, I had to choose. And so
I choose you.
I choose you. And so as wives, as for me, I have to remember, if I want to stay connected to him, I'm feeling disconnected. I've come and let him know I'm feeling disconnected. He begins to share with me what's going on in his heart. I begin to catastrophize it. I make it bigger than what it is. It teaches him, don't tell her what's going on. Keep it to yourself until you've resolved it. This disconnect continues, and then we wonder why we're doing this.
And I know we got to wrap up because they're about to knock on the hotel door in a second.
Just tell us to get on up out of here.
But every time you deal with a situation in a healthy way in your marriage, you build historical landmarks for you, right? So next time there's an issue or whatever, you've already built a pattern in the past of how you ought to address it. Good. And so now you can just lean back on how you handled it before and use that to address your issue right now. The reverse of that is what you just kind of communicated. If you build poor habits or whatever in dealing with stuff, when it comes time to deal with it here in the present, you think about what happened in the past and you're like, I'm not dealing with that no more. I don't want to deal with that. So it widens you. But every time you deal with something in a healthy way, it brings you Brings you closer.
Because everything in marriage either draws you further apart or brings you closer together.
Right.
So one of the things we do, we talk about it. We try to lean in. We try to do this. We try to get staycations, get away, because something really happens when we get away from our house, get away from the kids, and we're able to just laugh and talk and just have a good time. And another thing we do, and I wish I could tell you we do this every time, but we don't. But when it's something really big, when we can tell it's something really, really tearing at our connection, we will definitely pray about it. I can't tell you that every time we have a disconnect, we're saying, Father God, in the name of Jesus. I'm not telling you that, even though we are pastors. He's a pastor, and I support him as the pastor's wife. We don't pray about it every single time. Maybe we should, but we don't. But when it's a very, very major issue, we definitely pray about it. So again, guys, I hope that this conversation has helped you. I hope that watching our dynamic is not for you to pattern your marriage after ours. We are graced for our crazy. I want you to know that you are graced for yours. But we hope that this conversation just gets you thinking toward how you and your spouse can engage with one another. Again, I am hosting a very exciting training. It's absolutely free. It is live and it is virtual. So you can do it from the comforts of your home. You can watch as you are washing dishes and cooking dinner for your family.
On the subway or
absolutely
on the train or whatever, going to work, coming home.
So I want you to register. Go to IBelieveInMarriage.com/roommate zone. I am going to share with you in that training the 4-step process to getting out and staying out of the roommate zone, how to be sensitive to it, and what is the process you need to take. I hope you join me. Again, share this video on your social media pages. Happy anniversary, honey.
Happy anniversary, baby.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye, guys.